not a lot of parents are actually supportive of this kind of career.
Receive a phone call from my agent. She's like, oh, like, do you remember this thing you did? And you kind of learn to shield yourself so you don't get disappointed. And I'm like, I can't hear you guys. And they're like, put the headphones on.
And I'm like, honestly, if you're getting the call back, it's just a matter of time before.
If you're pretending to run, like you kind of have to go like this. You can't actually run because like on screen, I always feel like very like, don't move your eyebrows too much. Like, I want to see the waterfall through your voice.
What would you say is your vocal routine?
Very excited and young and like,
I love that.
Probably happen where something comes out and you look at it and you're like, oh, that wasn't my best take. He was like, I was on top of the world. I thought I was like a superstar in the making.
If you could like pick a video game, any character of a video game that you could voice, what would it be?
Like English dubbing is so bad, but then when you realize
how much effort, yes. People who have a strong why are usually the actors who do make it in the industry. What's up, guys? Welcome back with another episode of Breakthrough. Thank you so much for listening and for tuning in. If this is your first time subscribing or listening to the channel and the podcast, make sure to check us out at Breakthrough by Ali. Find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. So, without further ado, in today's podcast and video, I have my friend Kennedy Huffman-Baillargeon. She's also an actress. A lot of people ask what this podcast is about. So this is just for you to know that the reason why this podcast is called Breakthrough is just because we want to inspire people who are listening. People like actors, entrepreneurs, or anybody who has a dream. We really want them to like go after their dreams, right? So by listening or just watching someone who's done it, who's on this journey of like, you know, making it, I feel like it's just because like we often like associate a breakthrough to like a big swing, a big role in their career, but a breakthrough could be something as small as just like waking up in the morning and realizing that you can do this, right? That you can do anything you want. So this is really what inspired the podcast in the first place. So this is what this was all about. So
Thanks
Kennedy,
so much for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for coming. So how are you doing? How are you feeling today?
Feeling really good. Yeah, it's a bit cold here today. So.
It's a bit cold. We're in Montreal right now,
Don't
so
mind
we're not. This is the Montreal edition. So it's a bit cold. I think we've been like having some really good warm days lately, but
yeah, and then it like dipped.
It's really dipped, and it really has dipped. Okay, so first question. I want to ask you. So how did you get into acting? How did you get started? Yeah. What were you doing before leading into this?
Well, it kind of started as a kid. I was a very like over-the-top kind of expressive child. I was an only child for like 7 years before my siblings were born.
Yeah.
So like I was around a lot of adults, wanted a lot of attention, would like sing at people's weddings at like 3 years old, like just trying to get attention.
Yep.
So when I started high school, my mom was like, why don't you like look into the drama club? Or like, why don't you look into theater?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I signed up for theater. I signed up for like improv clubs and I loved it. It was so much fun. But I was very much of an overactor at that age, like very much like very over dramatic in my performances. So everyone was like, oh, like she has a lot of enthusiasm, but like she's probably not going to go anywhere.
Really? So they were like really supportive in the beginning. They were like, oh, you know what? Like,
well, they were like, it's a hobby, but you know, you're going to go to university.
She's going to wake up at some point and like go to uni and like, you know, have like a normal career like everyone else. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think, so when I told people, I was like, I think I want to do this. Like, I think I want to act. Like, I think people were like supportive, but also like, oh, like, you know, but also like look into getting a degree. Yeah. So I told my parents, I'm like, oh, I'm going to compromise. I'm going to go to university in theater.
Yeah, we're going to do the dramatic arts.
Exactly. I'm like, because then I still have a degree. You can't tell me I didn't go to university.
Right, so technically, like, you do have a degree. Maybe not what they wanted, but...
Exactly.
It's a degree. Like, a degree is a degree.
Yeah, so they were supportive of that. They were like, okay, like, that's better than nothing.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
So then I did my auditions and I got into Concordia in the theater.
So how long ago was that? Like, how long ago we're talking?
Yeah, so here we're talking, I got into university in 2016.
Okay.
And before university, though, my first kind of test into, like, if I was really, like, made for it or not.
Yep.
When I was 19, I went to LA and I went to train at the acting corps in North Hollywood.
Okay.
For a summer.
Right.
And that was, like, the first time that I was, like
doing,
like, Meisner and, you know, like...
They gave it a green light, like, yeah.
Yeah.
You've got a kid. Like,
and when I, like, came back from that, I think, like, I had so much, like...
Yeah.
energy and passion that they were like, of
Yeah.
course, like you need to go like follow your dreams.
Yes,
type
go
of
for
thing.
them. Yeah.
And I really appreciated that of my parents, that they were, I know they were very like apprehensive. They had a lot of like fears, but they let me do it, and
Yeah.
they didn't really show me the fears that they had. They trusted that I was going to figure it out eventually.
Yeah,
You know?
I love that. It's kind of nice that you mentioned that, because not a lot of parents are actually supportive like of this kind of career. It's not like it's not something people usually like go for, like in terms of like, career path. But it's always nice, when you have parents on your
Yeah.
side, like really supporting you like towards that. Yeah, it's always nice. So you're still doing your degree right now at university at Concordia?
No, so I graduated from Concordia, the acting program, in 2019.
Okay.
And that's when I started working. Like before then, I'd booked a few very small professional roles, like non-union roles.
Yeah.
But I didn't really like take it seriously. I was really focusing on school, and then when I left school, that's when I got an agent for the first time, and I started
Yeah.
auditioning, and that's kind of where I discovered like
Yeah.
voice acting.
Love that. Okay. So I was looking on your Instagram, and I saw that you were voicing Jeanne in Two Falls. Do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah.
Is that your,
Yeah, that's the first lead role in a video game I ever booked.
Nice.
And it's the only video game that I've been in that's actually out right now.
Okay.
Because obviously these things take a really long time in
does.
production. So I originally auditioned for this role in 2020. And it was like a self-tape audition I did on my phone, like under my blankets.
Yeah.
Like
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
Because I didn't have any
You needed
equipment.
that insulation.
Yeah, well, exactly. I was like, I can't have too much echo.
Right.
I don't have any equipment.
Yeah,
like,
it's not a sound booth, so right?
Yeah, never
This
really.
is the closest thing you have to a sound booth, is like you under the tree.
They're always like, you go in a closet or you go under a blanket. I don't know. Like,
Okay. I love it.
you're starting out,
That's good.
So, and I sent it to my agent. I think I did 2 different takes too. I did it in my regular voice, and then I did it with a like Quebecois accent.
Okay. They wanted both?
Well, they didn't say.
Okay.
And the role was
both?
described as a fille du roi.
Okay.
Actually, I did it in 3 different versions, if I'm not mistaken. I did it in my regular kind of like English Canadian kind of voice.
Right.
I did it in a Quebecois accent, and then
Okay.
I did it in a bit more like of a like French accent, like bordering like more like
Got it.
kind
Yeah.
of more international kind of French.
Right.
Because it didn't specify, but it said she was a fille du roi, so I didn't know like how accurate they wanted it
Right.
or not.
Yeah. So you just gave them everything.
Yeah, I gave him everything. I don't even know what
Pick
my
and choose,
agents, which take my agent sent. I don't even know if she sent all of them or just
Yeah,
one. But
yeah.
anyways,
I love that.
and like 2 months later, I receive a phone call from my agent. She's like, "Oh, like, do you remember this thing you did?" And I was like, "No. Wait, which one again?" And then I like was going
So many of them.
through, because there was so many self tapes at
Yeah.
that time, and
Yeah.
because you weren't in the room, they weren't very memorable in a way.
Right.
Like,
yeah, it does take. I guess like it's kind of like a thing that I actually like miss from like in-person auditions, is that you can actually like create that connection with the
Yeah.
with the, with the producers, whatever. But since you're just like sending tape after tape after tape, like, okay, which one we're doing right now? You know what I mean? Like you kind of like stop counting it.
exactly. And also like you kind of learn to shield yourself so you don't get disappointed. So
Yeah.
the minute you press send, you're like, that doesn't that was the gig. It
Yeah.
was that video, and now it's done.
Yeah. I just like I think I mentioned this on my podcast, and I just like have like one rule like when it comes to this, is just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
I just like film it and I send it, and I'm like, if I get it, great. If I don't, cool. I moved on already. So
Exactly.
So it's always like, if you do book something, it comes out a surprise,
Yeah.
instead of a disappointment because you were expecting something.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think it's a really good way to like protect yourself as an actor.
Totally. Yeah.
So yeah, I got a message from my agent saying like, "Do you remember this?" And I was like going back through my recordings. I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I remember this. I remember thinking at the time, oh, I could do this."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, you know, they want to see you for a callback." And
Nice.
I actually got to go in person and record
Love
in
it.
the
That's
booth.
great. Yeah.
And I was like so nervous and so green that like
In the callback.
in the callback that like I walk into the booth, close the door, and obviously it's sound insulated,
Yes.
and I'm like,
Stiff.
I can't hear you guys, and they're like put the headphones on, and I'm like, oh.
Light bulb moment.
And the minute that happened, I was like, I blew it. Like, they're not going to book. I don't even know where the headphones are.
I effed up my chances here. Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. That's so
embarrassed.
Funny. Yeah, I mean, you know what? If anything, that's what they want. They want somebody who's like clumsy and like freaking, they're messing up the things, the equipment's on you know what I mean? They're like, oh yeah, I guess that's someone fun to work with when you think about it. Yeah, they don't want someone like, just like, they come into the room, they're boring. Hey, how are you? How was your day? Action. Cut, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, they want someone like, I guess they want to laugh in between takes, right? So,
for sure, yeah.
'cause that's what you do, like, in between takes. You probably talk with the director, like, they give you notes, you laugh it off,
for sure.
Like, there's like that banter that's fun having.
Yeah, and I think also, like, once we actually, the audition actually started and we started recording lines, like, I feel like I was, like, more like, okay, I get this. And the character is also, Jeanne is a young fille du roi. She was in a shipwreck.
So, what's the story actually? What is it?
Yeah, it's set in New France.
Okay.
And it's about two perspectives. That's why it's called Two Falls. It's in the perspective of two main characters. Jeanne, the character I play, and a young character called Maigan, who's an indigenous Innu character.
Maigan, okay.
So it's really the game, just the aesthetic of the game. When we're playing in Jeanne's perspective, this forest is very scary and very like, jagged and like menacing.
Right.
Whereas when we're playing Maigan's side, it's very bright and colorful and warm. So I guess it was like to contrast the perspectives between the indigenous characters and the colonial, like settler characters.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But my character at the beginning, she's in a shipwreck. Everyone dies except for her and this dog, Capitaine, and she finds herself on the beach. She just came from La Rochelle in France, and she's like.
I love all these exotic names that they La Rochelle, France. What else there is? I don't know, but yeah.
But yes, she's like very like lost and scared and doesn't know how to do anything and like. Which kind of worked for me when I came in because I was like, I don't know where the earphones are.
Yeah, that's literally, you don't have to act it out. It's just you, like literally.
Exactly, and I think they saw that because I've heard from them later saying like when they heard my voice, they were like, oh, that's the character. Like,
okay, amazing, yeah.
So I was like,
what a great feedback to receive.
Yeah, it was like, and a week after that, I hear back from them saying you booked the role, but at the time, they didn't tell me what the story was about. They didn't even tell me that my character was the main character.
Right.
So I thought I was coming in for some NPC, one scene.
Yeah. So my question to you is, because you did this audition in 3 different like accents.
Yeah.
Which one did you use for the callback?
Oh yeah, good. I completely forgot about that.
I guess I'm very curious. What did you use?
Yeah, when I came in, they were like, "Oh no, we just want your regular Canadian accent." They're like, "We like the proposals, but like, no,
stick to that."
And they actually played the audition tape.
Oh, before you actually...
Yeah, they were like, this is what we liked. We like this.
Do that. Like...
But also, then they gave me a note. They were like, we like this, but make her a bit younger. And I was like, oh, okay.
Interesting.
And then we went in, and I was like, that's what I miss from live auditions from the first round. It's
you could have done that had you gone in the room.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And that's kind of sometimes what sucks. It's like you could be so close.
Yeah.
And because they don't have the time or a whole bunch of logistical reasons to have you in just to give you that one note, it could cost you a role.
Although they actually do send you sometimes, like it happened with me before where they gave me a direction through email.
Really?
Yes, it happens where I do a take. And then my agent says like, hey, they really liked your take, but they want you to redo it, but like pick up the pace or something. You know what I mean? Like just they would give like a direction. And I mean, I don't think they would actually bother like sending an email to the agent if they actually didn't like you. That's actually a good sign.
That's a super
If you actually get a direction by email from casting, it's a very good sign.
Oh yeah, they're interested.
Yes, they don't have time to like send directions to everybody. If they're sending it to you, it means that they like you. So that's honestly a win.
Yeah,
that's a
for
win.
Sure.
Yeah, so.
But yeah, so I performed in my regular accent, and that's what they liked. And I knew nothing about the character. I knew nothing about like her.
Did you have a breakdown of Jeanne? Like, they didn't give you like a bit of a backstory to it?
No, it was very, very early on in production. They had
You had nothing to work out with? Oh my goodness.
I
Okay.
didn't have any visuals. All I knew was that she was a fille du roi. She was lost in the woods.
Interesting.
And she was scared. Like, that's basically what they told me. So I was like, oh, like this is some NPC character that you meet along the way, and that's it. I did one recording, and by the end of it, they were like, "Oh, like you'll be coming back in," and I was like, "Oh, really?"
Oh.
Yeah. They're like, "Yeah, there's going to be multiple sessions. It's a it's a recurring gig for you." And I was like, "Oh, wow! My agent didn't tell me. That's good. Like,
Yes.
that's great. Thank you. Bye bye."
I love that. That's so good. That's so good for you. Congrats.
And then, like,
that's amazing.
Thank you. And then a few months later, I come back in for the second time, and then they're talking, and the way they're talking, I'm like,
can you overhear them?
yeah, no, they're talking to me about the character, about the situation, and I'm going like, wait, I'm like, so she's not an NPC? And they're like, no, she's the main playable character. And I was like,
oh. I know that. Like,
I got a bit nervous.
well, you're telling me that my character is bigger than originally planned? Like,
yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, this is a lead role? No one informed me this.
no pressure, action. Like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
And I was like, but then it was like exciting because I was like, I guess I started off without the stress of having that like, oh, this is my first lead role.
Yeah.
Like, this is a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I got to like kind of be eased into it.
Yeah.
And then they showed me the first like
Yeah.
teaser trailer,
Yeah.
and then I got to see the character a little bit, and then it started getting like real and exciting.
You know what? I'll just say, like, I mean, for a lot of actors, they think that a win is booking the role, which honestly is. It is like it's probably the biggest. It's bigger. It's probably the biggest thing you could receive is the role. But honestly, the fact you actually got a callback is the actual win, because
100%.
I can't like the amount of time I hear actor friends of mine tell me like, yes, I always get the callback, but I never get the role. And I'm like, honestly, if you're getting the callback, it's just a matter of time before you get the role.
Oh, 100%.
Trust me. Because you would not be getting the callback if they didn't like you. You're doing something right if you got the callback.
Yeah.
Now, if you didn't get the role, it can be for a lot of reasons. And most of the time, believe it or not, it's has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, nothing to do with your talent.
No, it could be like, I mean, sometimes it can be like, you know, like obviously you should be talented, like, you know, have like your, your acting up to speed. But like now, usually speaking, if they bring you back and you don't end up getting the role, sometimes it just could be the director's having a bad day and I don't know, like you just came in and you came at the wrong time you know what I mean? Like it's just, it could be that, or sometimes it could be like maybe the pants you were wearing that day, or it could be like the earring and no, it didn't like, you know what I mean?
Sometimes the look completely irrelevant. Slightly off.
That like, oh man, like if all you wear these earrings, we you know what I mean? It's like, it has sometimes nothing to do with you as an actor. And I think like, that's fine. If it's my height, if it's my, you know, like my eyes, my skin tone, like that's fine. I'll take it because that's not something you can control. What you can't control is your acting skills. Yeah, it's to be the best, like, you know, the best actor you can be. If you
come in and you're prepared and you do your thing, then there's nothing for you to be ashamed of or to like reanalyze. You did your job.
Yeah,
that's what.
If like my face is not fitting the character, I'll take that as a rejection. For me, it's good. I mean, if you saw me, it means that you like the acting. Yeah, I guess the look didn't fit, but that's fine, you know. So, I just wanted to. And then I also noticed Luna in Threads of Time.
Yeah, that's my most recent character.
The recent character. So was that? Looks like a completely different character, actually. Threads of Time. Like, is that like a sci-fi?
So that's an RPG, and it's like pixel art, so a bit like Stardew Valley.
Pixar, yeah.
But cut with kind of like anime style scenes.
Yes.
That's kind of the best description I have for it right now. And I'm playing a fire mage.
Okay.
Yeah, her name is Luna.
I thought you said fire maid. I was like, fire mage?
Fire mage.
Okay, that's interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, she's a magical kind of role. She's a little bit sassy, a little bit like, because Jeanne was a very more like wise character, and she was like a religious woman, and like, you know,
more together.
Like, very like resolute, and whereas this character is very all over the place, and she loves dinosaurs, and she freaks out every time she sees a dinosaur, because it's a time traveling game. That's why there's dinosaurs.
Threads of time.
And Threads of Time. Yeah.
So Fire Mage, like, were you like casting spells and stuff? Or like...
Yeah. We like came in. I should probably like. I can talk about it a little bit because there is a teaser trailer out. Right. When it came to recording like sequences where you like she's like playing with fire or like casting spells and stuff like that, that was a lot of fun because with Two Falls I had almost no visuals. There's one scene that I got to record as I was watching the scene. Okay. Everything else was done like
so Two Falls you had like nothing to look at?
Nothing to look at, no.
It was just lines?
It was just lines. They were in an Excel spreadsheet on a screen in front of me in the booth.
Wow.
So I didn't always have the line of the other, most of the time I didn't have the line of the other character. Wow. Either the voice director or the writer was usually in the room with us, and he would tell me kind of like briefly like what's going on in the scene. Okay. And I'd be reacting blind, like
so you didn't have that like natural sort of like response, reaction line of the other character. You kind of had to like imagine it almost.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's the thing about voice actors. Yeah. Voice acting in general is like if you're getting like into it, it's not like typical acting that you're maybe used to where there's a script and it's like back and forth, right? Yeah. Usually you're on your own, the other actor isn't there, and you're just doing your lines and you're doing 3 takes of each.
So, okay, because like voice acting is something I want to get into. I have not done voice acting. I want to get some training for that. Now, I was under the impression that like as a voiceover audition, don't you have like if it's like a script where you have your lines and maybe the other character's lines, wouldn't you like also record the other character's lines? Like maybe a friend it's just you?
No, for voice auditions, you don't want to do the other character's lines. You just want to do your lines because you don't want to cause any confusion because they can't see you. So typically you would just record your own lines. If you
Is it like this across the board, or is just...
I think it's pretty, in my experience here in Montreal, it's been like that. Maybe there's different requirements for different companies or different productions. But here it's very much like I've always been told, don't do the other lines because it's confusing to the listener. And also like if you need it as an actor to have someone else record the other lines and edit them out of your self-tape, you can do that. Yeah. But just be careful because if you book the role, you're not going to get that. Yeah, also if you overlap, it's hard to edit.
It's kind of hard to edit, right? Yeah.
For sure. But also once you book the role and you're in the booth, there's no one else reading the other lines. And most of the times you don't even have the other line. You just like 3 takes, 1 line in an Excel spreadsheet in front of you.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and some productions are very like it's a rolling machine. Right. So you'll do it 3 times and they'll say 1, 2, or 3 based on the take they want, and then they'll move on to the next one. Yeah. And there's like no feedback. But sometimes you'll be working on productions that have more time, like it's more of a passion project, so then they'll take the time to sit down with you and go like, okay, so you're walking through the woods and there's a creek on this side and then a bear jumps out, and like they'll give you context and then it's easier.
You get a little more, I love that. Okay, that's great. That's great. So what are some of the challenges you faced like in playing Jeanne and Luna? Like were there like moments on set or maybe during the audition that you were like, ugh? Or like maybe hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually, it happened a few times. The first thing I can remember is you have to be very careful with your voice when you're a performer. And usually they'll book you for pretty short sessions, an hour or 2 max. And I was coming in for a longer session. I think it was like a 3 hours. Yep. And we were doing very intense, like fighting and yelling and like really vocally intensive. And typically you would want to record your more normal and your natural voice lines at the beginning and end with the high intensity stuff because it really it wrecks your voice. And yes, there are like techniques and ways of like protecting yourself, but at a certain extent, by yelling, some things are going to happen to your voice, especially if you didn't properly warm up that day or things like that. And so we're doing a really intense scene, and they had forgotten that they had other lines for me to record. So by the end of the session, they're like, oh, let's try and do this. You were burnt out, yeah. And I just wasn't hitting it. They were like, it sounds like your character aged 10 years because like my voice was really croaky and I felt so guilty about it at the time because they had to end the session early. They had to rebook me, so it cost them. But then I was talking to other professionals in the industry, like people who've been doing this for like 25 years, and they told me, they were like, don't worry, you've done nothing wrong. That's their responsibility to put the lines in the right order. And as a performer, you shouldn't be doing more than like an hour of screaming at a time.
Yeah, literally. That sounds like very
And they're like, it's normal that your voice is going to be affected by that. And it's normal that you should go on vocal rest afterwards, like for a day or so.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then they're like, don't feel guilty about it. It happens. Like everyone makes mistakes, but this mistake wasn't on you. And I was like, oh, that's a really good thing to find out, because in acting school, they don't really touch voice acting. So
they don't. You know what's? It's funny. I've always like wondered why, because I did film school as well when I got to Vancouver, and we had a voice class, but that's not the same thing as voice acting.
No, not
that's
at all.
different. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you have like acting, like regular acting, like on-screen acting? We also have like voice acting, which is like another whole ball game by itself. But yeah, I agree. Like
it's true. I did voice classes too in school and singing classes, but not specifically about like microphone technique and like what's expected of you in that specific industry.
I agree. Yeah. Although I mean, like the voice stuff you learn are definitely like useful for voiceovers because breathing techniques and like all like using your vocal cords or whatever. But as far as you said, like voice acting and voiceovers, there's not a class like titled voice acting. It's just not. But there are like voiceover schools, right? Voice acting schools.
Like, yeah, if you want to specify in voice acting, yes, there's absolutely training out there. But if you're just starting off by doing the more general, like touching a little bit of everything, I was a bit surprised that wasn't something that we really explored. I had one class right before I graduated. They made us do like a voice self-tape audition, like a mock voice self-tape audition. And that was like a professor of mine who works a lot in video games. So he was kind of like, you live in Montreal, you're probably going to have to do a voice audition at some point because we have such a big video game industry.
No, I love that. It's good. The voice acting industry in Montreal is huge. Especially they have like a lot of like Ubisoft, all these games companies.
The big
so like gaming is just really big. So how would you like categorize the difference between like voice acting and on-screen acting? Because a lot of people, I guess, don't know the difference. A lot of people just like did like a lot of on-screen auditions, but when they do voiceovers, like, oh, like what am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to look at? Like, you know what I mean? So how would you like categorize both, and like what would you say is the difference, basically?
Well, I guess with voice acting, yes, there's a lot of technique because obviously you can't turn your head away from the microphone, or if you're shouting, you have to turn slightly away from the microphone. Like if you're pretending to run, like you kind of have to go like this. You can't actually run because you don't want that sound.
Correct.
So there is that really like restrictive technical aspect, but also on the flip side, there's that like liberation where you can like move your face in weird ways to like affect the tone of your voice in a way that you can't do that on screen. Like if
that'd be too much.
Like if you were like this, like it'd be weird.
Yeah, it would be. Maybe like a theater that would be passable.
Yeah, maybe
in theater,
some
but definitely on film and TV. Yeah.
But so in a way, I always found that like super liberating.
Yes.
Where in a way, like on screen, I always feel like very like, don't move your eyebrows too much.
We become so critical of ourselves. Like sometimes I like watching my team, I'm like, fuck, I blinked on seconds 10. Why did I blink? Stop blinking. You know what I mean? Like
that too. Like really bad time to be blinking.
No, definitely. But you know what? I think a lot of people don't actually realize, but when you do like a voice-over audition, I mean, it is called voice acting. You're still acting. It's no different. Like, you're bringing in like all the
authentic. It's
got to be authentic. Like just because you're doing a voice, just because your face is not showing, doesn't mean that you got to stop acting. You still got to bring like, the motivation of the character, your goals, your obstacles, what you want in the scene, all that stuff to sound natural, right?
Yeah.
To give your voice to the character. You're still acting, even though your face is not there. You got to give it your all, right? So, I think this is a lot of. I think this is a point that a lot of people miss, where they think of like voice acting as this sort of like, oh yeah, like they're not filming me, therefore I can fake it or something.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
They're just reading lines.
Yes, like I'm just gonna read them off. I'm gonna fake it. I'm gonna stretch it. Yes, I mean you're supposed to. You can like do all that good stuff. You're supposed to be like malleable with your voice. You can stretch it. You can play with the pitch, the tone, all that good stuff. But you can't lose the essence of the scene. Like it's still acting.
It's still acting.
It's called voice acting for a reason. Or else it would be called just voice.
For sure.
Like, right?
No, and you become attached to the characters you play as well. And something that really helped me is my voice director, Charles-Henri Godreau.
Shout out to him.
Amazing mentor of mine as well.
Yes.
And he would tell me sometimes, he'd stop and he's like, stop, take a moment, visualize what your character is seeing.
Yes.
Like he's like, you've just come to this edge of a cliff and then there's this giant, impressive waterfall, and you've never seen a waterfall before.
Right.
And it's the most majestic thing you've ever seen. I want to see the waterfall through your voice.
Correct.
And that was kind of a bit of a breakthrough moment for me as well, where I went like, oh, of course, like I'm still acting. It's still real.
Yes.
Like even though I'm just like reading lines off of an Excel spreadsheet,
Right. Yes.
And that too is like, it's really important if ever you feel like you're just not hitting it, try to memorize the line for a second, close your eyes, visualize what you're seeing, and just like go for it.
Yeah, I love that.
And I think
that
helps. Yeah, for sure.
That's good. So now, how do you like tackle like emotional moments? Like, let's say you're doing a scene, whether that's for an actual audition or like a voiceover. When comes a moment where you have to become emotional or the character is going through something heavy, how do you transition? Because like, I mean, the scene doesn't always start like that. Like, I think it's there's a difference between when the scene starts emotional, because you have that emotional preparation where you can do all that stuff. A lot of people have different techniques for preparing the emotions for the scene. When the scene starts off emotional, where like your character is like envisioning the death of a sibling or something like that, you bring it in. But now sometimes the scene doesn't start this way. Sometimes the character doesn't know that their mother is dying up until like 10 minutes later on, right? So how do you like tackle a scene that is very heavy in emotion? What's your process? What do you do?
That's something that I kind of struggled with when transitioning to voice, because often, because you're recording like multiple takes and they're very separate, sometimes you'll start like in the middle of a scene, and you don't always have that much time and that much context, whereas I feel like on screen you can be very much like you're with your scene partner, you're in the moment, you're looking into each other's eyes.
There's something to work off of.
There's a connection, there's something very tangible, whereas when you're like, in the booth in front of a microphone by yourself, you're like,
where did it go wrong?
Yeah, and Two Falls is a really heavy story. Like the final act of that story is really sad and really heavy subject matter. And I think for me it was really important to like acknowledge just how impactful and somber the difficult moments that she was going through were, and just try to use every line as its own mini scene, because I couldn't play a whole scene, right? Because that's not, the format doesn't permit me to play a whole scene. So I think it's like every take, it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to take a second and imagine something different every time.
Correct.
Because you can't just play a whole scene, and that's like, you have to be prepared for that as well, and you have to be prepared for how your voice sounds, and you still have to be clear. You can't like mumble, you can't like it's that I found difficult, but honestly I was really proud of those moments when the game came out and I got to listen to those moments and seeing like streamers
like
cry
how they turned out,
because they were so like impacted by those scenes. I was like, oh, okay, like this is really interesting that it can translate with the visual once everything's put together.
I love that. That's amazing. What would you say is your vocal routine? Like, what do you do before like you actually like tackle like a voiceover? Like, what do you do with your voice? What's your
Yeah, well, I mean, it takes about 24 hours to properly hydrate. So
Okay.
the day before, drink a lot of water. And I'm really bad at drinking water. I should probably drink
4
water.
liters a day is what we're supposed to drink. Yeah, so you haven't drank anything from that.
I'm like, I haven't even drank this yet.
Were you
I'm
waiting
terrible.
for my consent? Like, you may start drinking. You can drink, Kennedy. You can drink.
Thank you.
Full authorization.
Good thing I'm not recording anything tomorrow. But yeah, drinking a lot of water beforehand. I have a vocal steamer that I'll use for like maybe like 10 minutes the day before, and then after.
Yeah.
I know like voice performers who will bring it with them, and they'll vocal steam like during their break, and I don't know if it does that much for me. I think it's maybe more placebo. Okay. So I don't bring my vocal steamer with me. I'm not that level yet.
Yeah. We're not there yet.
Exactly. Maybe
we'll be like next time.
Check back in 15 years. But
well, I'll be back next year. We'll check in if we're there.
And like I like to drink tea before, even though apparently it doesn't really do anything to drink tea.
Just for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's soothing. I try to stay away from like dairy right before because I don't want to have like really like
or stuff like stuck in your teeth.
Exactly. Like just try to.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would like make you bite into an apple when.
Really?
But I actually don't really know what that does. So I'd have to look into the science of that.
Okay.
Because sometimes they would like
Do
go
you
like, bite into an apple, like eat a piece of apple, or there'd be like.
So they should make you bite into the apple, or you actually eat that chunk of the.
Yeah, you just eat a chunk, like a bite of an apple.
Oh, okay.
And apparently that helps sometimes. And drinking between like takes like the minute. Okay. You always have your water bottle like in the recording booth with you. And sometimes the director.
I guess like you can maybe like warm
water?
up your teeth or something. Like if you're biting into the apple and you're playing a vampire, you're like, oh, perfect. I just like bit into something. That's good. We're already there. Like, yeah. I love that's good. Yeah.
And then obviously like just warming up your voice, like doing little vocal exercises.
Yeah.
Like
it's good. I've because I did like voice class before, and like sometimes I get like a lot of different. Like vocal warm-ups and stuff like that. Where do you find yourself like, when you do like a voice audition, where do you find yourself like using your voice? Because I know there's like different ways, you can like use your chest voice, obviously the diaphragm, sometimes it's up here. Like, how do you know like which character has which voice, and like where do you find your voice? Where do you find yourself using your voice more?
I guess it really depends of the character. I think sometimes it can help a little bit with physicality. Like if like, you're
like an old lady.
You're playing an old lady, you're maybe gonna move your body a little bit use that vocal fry. Like I'm not that worried about safely using my voice.
Right.
And maybe I should.
Yeah, because we don't want to damage it.
Yeah, exactly.
You can definitely damage your voice.
Like I said, like I'm still like very, very new in this. So and I've been taking like little voice classes here and there, voice workshops to try and develop more technique. But I mean, for the role of Jeanne, it was very like in the chest and very like open and
it's very, very honest.
Hopeful. There's a lot of breath to it, I find.
Yeah.
Whereas Luna was like very nasal in a way, like very excited and young and like.
I love that. Maybe we're looking into like something.
It was an English accent.
Okay.
But
interesting. I love that.
It was a challenge, but it was a lot of fun.
Okay. Can't wait to see that. What would you say is your? So I'm hearing you talk about like your voice, about Jeanne, about like acting. What is your dream? What is the end goal? Where do you see yourself?
I've thought about that a lot.
Yeah.
I think when I was younger, I was like, oh, I want to be in all these big movies and I want to win an Oscar and like that's what I want to do. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, I actually don't really like acting on screen that much. And I really like the freedom that both theater and voice gives me. And as I've gotten to experience more voice work, I realized like, wow, like that is my passion. And even if I just do that on the side for the rest of my life, like every few months,
you're good with that?
I come in, record a bit.
Yeah.
I think I'll be happy, and maybe eventually I'd really like to voice direct. Like that's why I've gone back to university in communications, because I wanted to learn more about behind the scenes, about sound production and things like that, because like I'd really like to be able to direct my own voice projects.
Yeah. See, there's something I see a lot too, especially like I mean, it's something we see like amongst all actors, really. I see like where actors start like, obviously like they have roles in films and movies, but they also like have like, further aspirations where they want to direct an episode or they want to produce a film. I have not gone there yet. I haven't felt that, I guess that feeling of like wanting to produce my own thing. But I find it very interesting how a lot of actors go from like just performing on screen to wanting to direct or be involved.
Maybe it's like we're looking for control in a way, because like they always say that
because you don't have that freedom of like doing whatever you want, right?
Like screen acting is the director's medium, whereas theater is the actor's medium. Because in theater, once you're on stage, there's nothing the director can do. You can do whatever you want.
Right, yeah.
You know, at that stage, like if you decide that you want to say like goodbye to all the lines and improvise something, he can't do anything about it. Like, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas in film, like the amount of times that it's probably happened where something comes out and you look at it and you're like, oh, that wasn't my best take.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that there was a better take. Why did they choose this? Why did they choose that?
That's so true. I agree. I couldn't agree more, honestly.
I'm like, why did they edit it like that? Why is there an unnatural pause here? That's not how I performed it.
Yeah.
And as time goes by, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm just like, I just want to have control over my material.
Interesting.
And I think that directing is an avenue for that.
This is a side I didn't really, it's a very good point, actually. I never really looked at it that way, but it does make total sense now that you mention it.
Yeah, I don't, like, that's my personal interpretation. I'm sure other people have very different reasons why.
Yeah. But I guess like also like maybe the biggest one is, I mean, let's be honest, like you make way more money behind the camera than in front. I mean, yes, we see all these actors being millionaires, but the truth is like, trust me, directors, producers, the actual people behind the movie and the show are making way more. You know, maybe they're not known for it because, you know, like that's not what you see on screen. But I guess like there's like this financial, I guess, you know, if you wanted more money, then...
And there's a stability to it in a way as well, whereas acting, you know, you can have a really good month and book like 2-3 gigs in 1 month and then have nothing for 9 months, you know? Like it happens all the time. Even like my voice director, I was talking to him and he told me, he's like, the first year he made over $500,000 in acting. He was like, I was on top of the world. I thought I was like a superstar in the making. Like I was crushing it. And the next year he made $700.
That's crazy.
And he's like, you can't get discouraged by dry periods. That's the nature of the business and the nature of the game. So I guess also directing is something that also like it can give you a little bit of that stability that I think a lot of us start craving as we get older. Because, you know, when you're 19, 20, 21 and you have absolutely no responsibilities in the world, you can do whatever. You can go to LA for 2 months and do this. And then, you know, I was in Germany working on a theater festival in Bavaria for a while when I was 21 or like things like that where you can just like do whatever. And I guess I could still do whatever, but there's more responsibilities in life, and I think that they're finding that balance between still voice acting but also having a bit of that creative like responsibility and in directing could be really cool.
Yeah, I agree. This is a very good, that's so true. Now, for anyone who wants to start voice acting, myself included, what is a piece of advice that I guess like, where should we start? What is your advice to us? Like if someone wants to get into voice acting, what should they have? What do they need to do to kind of be decent at it?
I think 3 things that I can think of. Obviously, when it comes to training, ACTRA is a great resource if you're an ACTRA apprentice or an ACTRA member here. They do a lot of voice workshops.
I guess if you're in the States, then you have the SAG-AFTRA. They have probably similar things.
I'm sure there's resources in every city. So look up like in your local city, like what kind of classes or workshops or things like that, just so you can start getting a bit of an idea. And then playing video games. If you want to get into the game industry, you need to understand the tropes and how, because a lot of characters are kind of like, you know, there's a genre. So being familiar with the material, it's not the same as film acting. It's not the same, you know, as like kids TV show animation. It's its own genre. So I think you need to be really familiar with like playing games here and there. And then, like, I don't even know what the third option as well, when it comes more to like dubbing stuff.
Okay.
I've been told by directors that you find out who they are and you just email them and you just send them their material, because most of the time they're not even auditioning people. They have their roster.
Okay.
So like here in Montreal, through Actra, I got to do one of their dubbing workshops over at Diffuse.
I was going to get into that. That's my next question, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like a really great resource. And he was like, yeah, no, he's like, just email us with your demo. And it doesn't even have to be a voice demo. It can be an acting demo. We just want to hear your voice, and that we want to hear that you're able to act.
Right.
And if your voice fits a role that we're trying to cast, we have our roster, and we'll just like message. Like most of the time you're not auditioning for those roles. You just have to like, I know it's scary, but just like send the email.
Yeah, just send a damn email, you know? Don't send it, don't look back, you know?
I have some emails to send.
In terms of the gears, what do you need to get your hands on? I mean, obviously you need a mic. For example, can we like in this room right now, like tape a voice over audition, or that would be too much echo, for instance?
I mean, but that's the thing, is for auditions,
right?
It's not that serious.
It doesn't
I think
matter,
like
right.
I've booked all my gigs recording on a cell phone.
Okay.
You know, now I'm more equipped because now I know more about voice editing and sound editing. So now I'm recording my own demos, and I have more of a setup where I'll have acoustic foam and a podcasting mic, and I use
So your whole room is like,
software.
there's like foams, acoustics, and
there's some
it's
foam.
soundproof.
There's
An airplane passes by, we can't hear it.
No, it's not quite there yet. It's a little bit better, when it comes to my old setup.
Okay.
It's not under a blanket.
I mean, she did book her audition under a blanket, just saying, you know what I mean? We had none of that.
Exactly, and I think as long as you listen back to it, as long as it's clear and there's not like a whole bunch of sound in the background and it's not distorting your voice,
correct.
That's all they need.
Right.
Because then once you come in, they have all the professional equipment. So as long as they have an idea, obviously if you can use a podcasting mic that you have at home, like it's better.
Yeah.
But like, no stress. It's starting to really intimidate me, the fact that like more and more for self-tape auditions, people have more and more professional equipment. And it's like, I find it a little bit worrying when new actors are spending thousands and thousands of dollars before they've even booked a role and indebting themselves because they think that this is what is going to make them book the role. And at the end of the day, you need to be focusing on your performance more, I think, and your craft and getting better, because, I've seen so many like they got the role and you see the self-tape and it's not that clear, but the performance is there. And
the essence,
they see that.
It's not the one who has the most expensive gears who's going to book it.
It's a bonus. Like if eventually you're in a place where you can get that, go for it. But don't start off putting yourself in trouble with that.
For sure, yeah. I mean, at some point you do want to get there because you also want to sound professional. Oh, right? 100%. You don't want all your auditions to be like cell phone made all the time. You obviously want to make it look a bit more professional. But that being said, I guess like you also have to invest into like expensive gear. It's like, can't you just go to like your local library? Don't they have like, I know in Vancouver they have like sound booth in the public library.
Really?
Yes,
I didn't
there
know
is
that.
like sound booth. So like if there's any singer or someone who actually wants to record a song or like something, you can like literally go. I'm not sure if you can go for free, but I mean it probably doesn't cost that much. But you can literally just go and rent out a sound booth, so you don't actually have to like, get your hands on all these expensive materials, right? That you need. I'm sure they have something out here.
Yeah,
too.
they probably have stuff like this. If you're in university, I know with the universities,
yes,
you can
universities for sure they have it. As a matter of fact, Concordia has it for sure. I remember that.
Yeah,
because
I've used their podcasting studios. In the past.
Yeah. So it's good. What genre do you find yourself like really gravitating towards? Like, are you more like? Do you find yourself like enjoying more like animations? Is it like video games? What do you like more?
Video games for sure, because usually the characters are a lot more vast and you get to do all the fun oh no's and like the efforts and all the like it's really fun and exciting. But I also really like narration. Like I think that it's always like a little treat, to do some narration, because it's not as high intensity. Yet it sounds really cool. I don't know.
I mean, people would rather listen to a voice rather than just like watching and playing documentaries. There's a reason why I mean, I love watching David Attenborough's like documentaries on wildlife and stuff. You know, his voice, I don't know, there's something to his voice, and he doesn't play with his voice. He just says the things the way, like, and the bird, just, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, he has this very specific...
There's something about, using kind of like your soothing voice. I find it really fun.
Yeah,
and
really especially
relaxing.
when you especially when you pair it with like, you know, nature rolls and wildlife and ocean shots and stuff. Adding a voice that is very like pleasing to the ear, just like adds more... I don't know what the word is, but like, I guess it's more appealing.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I think so.
So video games is where you see yourself. Like, if you could, like,
if
all your bookings could be video games,
I'd be so happy. Like, honestly, like,
you'll be
my dream, my dream is eventually like to book like. I'd love like a AAA kind of action character. Like that would be really, really fun.
If you could like pick a video game, any character of a video game that you could voice, what would it be?
It's really
knowing that, like, I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine this, but like, for example, like knowing that you can't, because obviously, like, if you have like a specific character in mind that you already know the voice for, just try to imagine that this character didn't have a voice and you had to give it your voice. So which character would that be?
I think I'd love to be in a game kind of like Baldur's Gate 3.
Okay.
A character kind of like in the style of Karlach in Baldur's Gate. I think that would be really fun. Like someone like kind of like fiery and tough on the outside, but with a heart of gold. You know, like that kind of like you know, at the beginning comes off really strong and kind of like, you know, disagreeable, and by the end of it, you really like grow an attachment, and they have a soft side. Like I really like those kinds of arcs.
It shows the arcs and the journey, right? Like where you see the. I mean, there's nothing more filling, you know, than to watch characters go through the motions, right? You know, go like, this is why we love like stories so much. It's because we see the characters grow like, you know, they go through like so many hurdles to actually get up to that mountain or whatever. Like they're trying to save somebody, but in the way, you know, they encounter so many things, and you know, you think that like this is it, he's gonna die here, but no, like, you know, they overcome that, and then, you know what I mean? So this is what makes it thrilling to watch. I guess to watch, because you are watching.
Yeah, you are watching. It's kind of like mini movie scenes. That's the cool thing about games too, is that you get to play over a much longer period of time that you would like in a film. So kind of like more like a TV show in a way. So that's really fun too, because you get to play characters that are like that grow greatly. Like that's something that I got to do with Jeanne, where at the beginning she's this really like scared young girl, and by the end of it she's like this strong woman, and she knows what she's doing, and she's, you know, but she's also very tired, and she's grieving. So playing that evolution was really, really fun.
I love that. Now I want to get to a more specific question. When you actually voice a audition, when they actually make the, whether it's the video game or the video itself that goes with the voice, are these like videos pre-made and then they lip sync it with your voice, or they record the voice and then they kind of like, they you know, they do it with the computer, the way they lip sync the lips of the character with your voice? I'm just like, I've always like wondered.
It really depends on the production and the budget.
Okay.
For Two Falls specifically, I know that, well, most of the time you're playing like in the POV of the character, so you don't actually see her face. You hear her and you see her hands, but you don't see her face.
Okay.
But in the moments when you do, they had to go in and manually animate the lips to match the dialogue, because the dialogue was recorded first.
Yes.
But other productions like Baldur's Gate, for example, like that are big budget, they'll do it through performance capture. So they'll actually capture the actor's mouth.
Okay.
And like the whole performance, but also they'll have like the specific, like, you know, with the dots and everything around the mouth.
That's motion capture.
Yeah, motion capture.
Yeah.
And so they'll be able to animate it through that, which that is really fascinating to me.
Yeah, mocap is something I want to do. Like,
but when it's so cool. And Actra also has a video game workshop here in Montreal, and I'm trying to get into it. So we should find out like next week if I made it to the auditions. I'm very excited.
I mean, let me know, because I do want to know. I'm very curious. I love that. It's amazing. Now, I want to go to dubbing for a second, because I know I wanted to touch on that. How do you find like dubbing? Is like dubbing like a whole different like thing, or like is it falls into? Because it like you're basically like the video is already made. Someone's already like voiced this in its original language, but you have to somehow make it work with what they already shot, right? So do you have like a different sort of a routine for dubbing? Do you even go for dubbing or?
No, I haven't really started dubbing yet. I've done some workshops, so I'm familiar with the technique with the Ritmo band. But that's actually one of my goals for this year is I want to try to do some more dubbing work. But I know that it's a lot more fast paced because you have to match the lips of the character, even though you're speaking in a different language.
Yes.
So even though you're saying different words, if the character stops talking, you can't be finishing your line because if not, it looks off.
It does, yes.
So they work with like the flaps of the mouth, like every time your mouth opens and closes.
Right.
And the dialogue goes by at the top written in cursive, and when it hits the line, that's when you have to say the word.
Yes.
But you're also keeping an eye on the character and the situation.
There's so much to keep an eye on.
So hard, and it's that's why I have so much
such a skill.
appreciation for dubbers now, because in the past you're always like, oh, like English dubbing is so bad. But then when you realize
how much effort? Yes, yeah.
I'm like, oh no, they're doing fine. Like,
forget what I said. They're killing it.
I'm like, because I struggle. Like it's always better when the character turns away and like you don't see their mouth because then you can kind of like focus and do
you can get away with that.
Want.
Yeah.
But the minute you see the mouth, it's like
that's so true.
I don't know. I find it's definitely a skill, and I'd like to maybe do more workshops and try to perfect that because I really don't have the confidence yet.
Yes, I mean this is the reason why I was like touching on that, because it sounds very fascinating where you have to like, oh, how do they make it work? It's like it's already, the video's already there, like the lips of the character has already been synced with the original voice of the character. So like now they have to try to make it work somehow with an actual voice actor from another language. There's a lot of things to like. So I guess you're watching the character in real time.
Yeah, so you're
as you're saying your lines.
Yeah, giant studio where they're projecting the scene in front of you, and then they have the Ritmo band.
It's almost like karaoke, right?
Yeah, and you're at this bar, and it's like this big room with like, it's not as restrictive. It's not like a tiny booth. It's like a really big room.
Okay.
And there's a huge screen, and then this like bar in front of you, and you just stand at the bar and you perform.
Wow.
And they'll do the entire scene. So or like a big section of it.
Right.
So
there's no pause.
Yeah, it's not like where I'm used to stopping between every single line in video games to all of a sudden having to like talk nonstop for like a minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And like the pros, they can like do it like in 1 or 2 takes. But I can't imagine having that flow. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Cool. Well, I love that. Let me know when you get into dubbing because I would love to. I'm always like so fascinated by dubbing because I do watch animes every now and then, not as much as I used to, but I still enjoy like watching animes, and I feel like the French dub for animes is so fascinating. Okay, no offense to the English to the Americans, but I feel like because I think it's like because in France it's really in their culture. Yeah. Animes are big in France. So I guess like they take it very seriously to the point where they hire like really good like dubbers, right?
Also, just when it comes to dubbing things in another language that isn't English, it's a way bigger industry because the majority of like Hollywood films come out in English, right?
Correct.
So they don't have a need for English dubbers.
They don't.
Whereas like in Quebec, there's a huge French dubbing industry because they have to translate all these movies.
Correct, yeah.
So because there's a tradition of it, there's a lot of training around it. There's like the best voice actors that they've like spent their entire life perfecting their craft.
Yes.
That's why it sounds often a lot better.
It does
in another language than English.
Yes, I agree. That's so true. That's such a good point that I completely missed. Okay, before we wrap this up, I want to get to the last question. So is there any, again, it's always what I usually ask, are there any things you're working right now that you are not allowed to say? What can you share with us? Or is there any, maybe not acting related, but maybe something that you want to, I know you mentioned like getting into dubbing this year. Is there anything in the works that you want to maybe share with us?
Yeah, well, I'm still working on Threads of Time, so hopefully that will come out eventually. That's the thing with games is you never know if they're going to get greenlit or not.
Nice, yeah.
And yeah, I just kind of want to focus. I took a break from like being represented, so I think my goal is this year to find an agent here in the city and explore my options.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, is this something I hear a lot too? Like, do I need an agent? The question is honestly, no, you don't need an agent. It kind of depends on what your goals are, right? If your goals is just to, just act, get on short films, perform, do theater, you don't need an agent for that, right? You only need an agent if you want to go for more professional stuff. But if you're completely happy by just auditioning for short films and stuff like that, or sometimes the question is like, are you ready for an agent? Maybe because there's no point of getting an agent sometimes. When an actor is not ready, right? So sometimes like I'm talking to actors, I'm like, yeah, I just like took a week intensive in the school. Should I get an agent? I'm like, I mean, you can, right? But you feel like ready to get one, right? So it's just about So again, there's no, we all take like breaks, we all have our thing. And sometimes there's nothing wrong. It's just like taking a step back and focusing on the craft and like, just finding.
I think it's important to remember why you're doing it as well. There's been multiple moments where I've become a bit overwhelmed and like, do I like this anymore? Because it's a stressful job. Don't get into acting thinking it's going to be always fun and easy because it's really demanding. And there's been moments where I've needed a few months break and go okay, am I still really passionate by this? And that's what this year has been for me. I was able to really like work on my voice skills, work on my editing skills. I booked my gig by myself for Threads of Time. And then I was like, okay, now I'm ready again, get an agent again, start auditioning more regularly again, get back into it. It's important to remind yourself of like why you got into it in the first place. I
agree. And still on that why, I don't know if you actually took the Bernard Hiller workshop.
No, I've heard a lot about it though. I almost did it.
I took it when I started with the House of Actors a couple of years ago, and actually, like if you went into his workshop, again, really good workshop. If you guys ever have the chance, Bernard Hiller Studios in Los Angeles. Now he puts the emphasis on. He noticed over the years that a lot of actors who's made it, he said that the reason why they make it is because they had a strong why. This is something that a lot of actors don't realize, and like. When we say why, it's not like, oh, I want to make money, I want to get famous. Sometimes there's always a deeper reason, okay? We have to deeper within, we have to go deeper within ourselves and find like, why do we actually want to act, right? Like, because maybe there's like a void in ourselves that we're trying to fill, or sometimes maybe like you're trying to fulfill someone else's dreams, like maybe like a relative, a brother, a mom, who didn't have this opportunity, for example, to get to do that, and maybe you're kind of like, in a way, doing it for them, you know what I mean? So, there's always like, again, a lot of these actors, like that's what he said, right? So this is actually one of the biggest takeaways I took from his masterclass is that people who have a strong why are usually the actors who do make it in the industry. So without a strong why, it's just that you have nothing to go back to. You know what I mean? Because like whenever it's like a mantra, like it's just like whenever you're auditioning, whenever you're doing all these things, it's always in the back of your head that you got to remember why you're doing this at the end, like, and sometimes people do want to get famous. That's their why. And believe it or not, sometimes they do make it. They have such a strong why. I met an actor a couple of years ago, and when they asked him like why he wanted to be an actor, he said, I want to be famous. I want to be like the next Leonardo DiCaprio and like the next big hit. But you can feel it in the way he said it. Like he really, really wanted it. And like I think that like right now he's actually killing it. Like he's on a lot of shows. He like series rag and whatever. So like, if you want something really, really badly, doesn't matter what it is. If you just like really stick to it, something sometimes as superficial as being super famous, can do it. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just like it really just depends on your why. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. What are your resolutions? Because I know like this is the New Year's. What are New Year's resolutions? Since we're on it, like what are you looking forward to this year that you want to?
Well, yeah, like I said, I want to like perfect my voice demos. I want to get into that actor workshop. You know, I want to explore performance capture and hopefully book a role in performance capture, because I think that's like the next like big step for me. I think in my career, if I can get to that step, I'll be like
blessed,
like where I want to be, you know.
I love that. Maybe we'll check in, you know, next time we have you on.
Yeah, like, you know,
maybe you're killing it on a motion capture animation. It was, I love that. All right, well, Kennedy Huffman, everybody, thanks so much for watching again, guys. If this is your first time, check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Breakthrough by Ali Scene. But until next time, Happy New Year, everybody, and we'll see you next.